Hello, Bill.
Good morning, Matt.
Welcome to the DMZ. They barely noticed that we were gone.
Some of the super fans have said, "Where's DMZ? I need my DMZ. I want my DMZ."
Superfan Christy Spates asked, and I blamed you. I threw you under the bus.
We both had conflicts this week, not just me.
I could have found time, but
well, just so folks know, I spoke. You tend to get booked on the Rockstar Pundit tours. I actually had two speaking engagements this week. One with Williams College, the campus chapter of the American Enterprise Institute. Invited me to Williams, and that's because the campus coordinator in D.C. watches this show. And saw that I lived not too far away. And I got to meet former Congressman Chris Gibson, who was a great guy, and I think is sort of a Matt Lewis conservative. So, did
you tell him he's a Matt Lewis conservative?
I didn't put it in those terms, but
you should have.
But you guys. I mean, he's up in. He's still living in upstate New York and teaching at Williams. But you should visit. When you visit me,
you should hang out.
When you visit me, you should visit him too. And actually, they put my talk on YouTube, the folks at Williams, so you can hear that online.
Oh, that's cool.
And then yesterday, I spoke at Springfield Technical Community College with a local conservative, Isaac Moss, who is a city councilor north of me. And also a Matt Lewis conservative, by the way. Very, very genial. Not a Trump fan. So we had a good chat as well. So I was open Wednesday. We could have spoke on Wednesday. You're the one who put the kibosh on that, not me.
All right. Well, mistakes were made, but here we are.
But you like talking on Friday anyway. You like not getting undercut by late breaking news.
Well, I just don't know that it matters, though. Don't you? Like, do you think? Is it less likely that something will happen Friday afternoon or Saturday? It may be more likely.
We could still get screwed, but there has been certainly plenty to go. Plenty that's happened in the Mueller investigation that we would not have had to talk about if we taped on Wednesday.
That's true, but who knows what's going to happen at 2:00 today when we stop taping.
But you weighed in on the developments so far in your Daily Beast column.
Yeah, no, I wrote a piece. It's a different kind of column. But I wrote a piece today basically telling conservatives, I mean, if you look at the events that have happened just in the past week or so with the Jerome Corsi, with Michael Cohen, with Roger Stone, you go down the list, Donald Trump giving written answers to the Mueller investigation. There's so many events in the past week. Most notably, I guess, would be the Michael Cohen, admitting that he had lied to Congress, and about the timing of when he had discussions about a Trump hotel in Moscow. Now it appears to have gone, I guess, into June or July of 2016. It seems like things are coming to a head. I don't know when Robert Mueller is ever going to, deliver his report, but things seem to be coming to a head. And this was just basically a warning to conservatives, like, we shouldn't fly off the handle and freak out, but we also shouldn't just reflexively dismiss what the findings are. This could be very serious, and I think that you don't want to be caught on the wrong side of history, and there are two different ways you could do that. I think that there are some people who have been like radicalized by Trump in the sense that, like, at the age of 50, you've decided that, like, your position on guns was always wrong, your position on the climate was always wrong, your position on Iraq was wrong. That seems weird to me, okay? On the other hand, I don't, people who used to be thoughtful, serious, decent, conservatives who cared about the rule of law and integrity, all of a sudden are now apologists for Trump and he can do no wrong. That's also a mistake, right? And so, like, we've had this, Trump has already scrambled things and made our lives difficult. But I think that this moment when Robert Mueller actually delivers his report is going to really be a time for choosing my column was a warning to conservatives, like, get ready. If you haven't grappled with where you stand on this yet, this is going to be a moment where I think where you are kind of gets locked in as part of a defining moment.
Now, your CNN contributor colleague, Jeffrey Toobin, said yesterday that this was the first time he really thought that Trump might not finish the term. That he acknowledged that the only way Trump does get forced out is because of Republicans. Senate Republicans have to, either impeach or convict, or tell Trump, look, you're going to get convicted, so you got to get the heck out of here. Unless you have that Republican element, it doesn't happen. But he thought for the first time maybe that could actually happen. Excuse me. It sounds like you think there's some truth in that. This is our perennial conversation. What's the breaking point? Do you see the possibility of there actually being a breaking point now?
Well, it's possible. Look, I mean, mainly my argument is talking to people at the micro level, not at the macro level, but at the micro level, just telling them we can't control the world, but we can control ourselves. And whether you're, just a regular civilian, or whether you're a grassroots activist, or whether you're a conservative commentator, or if you're a Republican politician, you need to do the right thing and be honest about confronting whatever it is that's in this report. So mainly I'm talking to people at the individual level, right? Having said that, yeah, I think it's within the realm of possibility. I think that, at the individual level, I'm urging people to do the right thing based on, character. But at the macro level, I think people, by and large, tend to respond to incentive. So it really comes down to, do they think that they can, that throwing Trump under the bus is inevitable, that they're going to be held accountable if they don't do it. I think that there's obviously going to be a hesitancy to do that, but there may come a point where it happens. And look, what would be so bad about it if you ended up with President Mike Pence at the end of the day?
Well, that's why.
Unless he goes down too, right? I mean, you never know.
But I mean, there hasn't been that much allegation that that Pence is caught up in it directly. But you wrote earlier after the election that Congress, the Republican part of Congress, has gotten Trumpier after the election. And I just saw in the House now there are only 3 Republicans in the House in the next Congress in districts that Clinton won. All the other ones got beat, and whereas Democrats have expanded their ranks of people who are in Trump districts, and Republicans have expanded their ranks in the Senate with people like Mike Braun in Indiana, Kevin Cramer in North Dakota, and I guess Hawley in Missouri is not maybe not super Trumpy. Maybe we'll be super Trumpy now. I mean, he was more of an establishment guy.
Yeah, I don't know about him. I think that he used to be a Matt Lewis conservative,
right.
But he definitely ran as a Donald Trump Republican.
And Rick,
so I don't know.
And Rick Scott, I'd say, is on the Trumpy side too in Florida. So those are your four new Republicans. So how do you square the Trumpier Congress with the possibility that they might feel compelled to abandon Trump if things get too high? I mean, is it possible that they can't get there because Trump's hold on the party base and the more ideologically narrow what remains of the Republican caucus, they just can't do that?
Well, look, I think the fact that Democrats won the House makes it more likely that Trump would be impeached by the House than it would have been, when Republicans had the majority. But the Senate's always been such a high bar to get 67 senators, whether Republicans picked up 2 or 3 extra seats or not, was already going to be such a high bar that I think in order to have that kind of vote to actually remove a president, you would really have to have very clear evidence that something very egregious took place, and that we will see what happens there. But look, there may be things that are revealed that do not rise to the standard of garnering 67 votes in the U.S. Senate, but would certainly rise to the occasion of, anyone out there who wants to go on the record of being on the side of decency and patriotism simply cannot any longer go along. And so maybe you end up having people like what Jeff Flake is doing right now by holding up some of these judicial nominations in the Senate.
Flake is leaving.
He's leaving, but you
would need, I believe the Republicans are going to be at 53 in the Senate, and there's 47 Democrats. You would need 20 Republicans you would need almost half of the Republican caucus in the Senate to convict Trump.
It would have to be something truly provably egregious in order to get that, right? I mean, obviously.
I mean, I was like, I feel like there needs to be some word beyond that, because just merely egregious, I don't think would move a lot of the Trump base.
It has to be so devastating, which I think is unlikely, but within the realm of possibility that there will be something. But look, I think part of it is that we've become a little bit desensitized to things. And the standard is, can Donald Trump be impeached? Will he be removed? Look, if you said, 5 years ago, there's going to be a president and his national security advisors are going to go to jail. And this is barring pardons, right? His personal lawyer is going to go to jail and or flip on him and turn state's evidence. His campaign manager is going to go to jail for the rest of his life. His national security advisor is going to go down. There's going to be 2 or 3 other members of administration who do time. I mean, George Papadopoulos, has he reported to jail? I think he has.
I think he has.
So that in and of itself is scandalous and very noteworthy.
Let me shift gears to what I wrote about this week, which is the fight over the speaker's gavel and we brought more broadly the Democratic leadership elections, which
I wrote about that this week too.
That's right, you did,
yeah.
And we're largely on the same page here. Well, all should give Nancy Pelosi her due respect as the master negotiator.
We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
And if I may say, Matt, I was defending Pelosi for a year, more than a year. I wrote 2 defenses of Pelosi for Real Clear Politics before the election. Whenever there was this sort of spate of, Pelosi is dead weight, Pelosi's killing us, how can we win the House with Pelosi? I kept making the argument that you need her on that wall. And after the election, when the Seth Moulton revolt began, I wrote a piece for Politico. And this is before the Moulton letter was released, when it was just sort of it was just being talked about. I wrote, forget Pelosi, challenge Hoyer.
Yeah.
If you want to make a stand for, fresh blood in the leadership, don't take out the person at the very top who deserves a lion's share of the credit for the House victory, has proven herself more than capable in that post, and is going to need an incredible amount of skill to manage a caucus that is very ideologically diverse and bulky going forward. Go after the number 2 white guy. That's the other big thing here, which I predicted this, and I warned them publicly. You go after an historic figure like the first woman speaker with no real substantive reason, because your only argument was political, and that argument has been debunked by the victory.
Ageism was also...
ageism is a weak argument without any substantive element. Not just you're old, but you're old and you're doing a bad job at your current post.
Plus, Nancy doesn't look old. She doesn't seem old.
Right.
She looks young. She seems very sharp. So it doesn't really... So it's not like she's old and out of touch. It's like you could say like, well, we need a fresh face or something, but like it doesn't really work fully.
So it was very predictable that you were going to stoke an enormous backlash amongst people in the Democratic base who are saying, you're being sexist, you're being ageist, why are you scapegoating her when she just did a great thing and not going after all these other people? And whereas if you win against Hoyer, there's none of that. There's no natural Democratic constituency that was going to say, how dare you malign the good name of Steny Hoyer. Now, 2 days after I wrote that piece, Steny Hoyer puts out a letter saying, I got the support of 150 of my colleagues. And there's no opponent there. So,
but do you think that if someone had strategically said, forget Nancy, let's put all of our eggs in let's elevate one of our own, like a young Turk, to the Steny Hoyer position, that they might have had a shot?
Well, I wrote a second piece this week where I dissected all of the Seth Moulton mistakes, of which there are many. But I think the biggest one, I mean, if he was committed to getting rid of Pelosi, and he has been for 2 years now, so he wasn't going to listen to me say forget Pelosi altogether.
This is from your home state, or not from your current state, right?
Yeah, he's in the opposite corner. He's in the northeast corner of Massachusetts.
Okay, so you may bump into him,
I've never seen him out west, I gotta say.
At the Whole Foods or something. Where I assume you shop.
I don't shop at Whole Foods. I have a local co-op that I go to.
Okay.
If I'm going co-op, I'm going my local co-op. My day-to-day shopping is Stop and Shop. So
protesters, you know where to find them.
That's right. So he should have, on November 8th, had a slate of challengers, a candidate to go after Pelosi, a candidate against Hoyer, and a candidate against Clyburn. They should have been a diverse trio. They should have been diverse demographically. They should have been diverse ideologically, because his current list of people are all on the right edge of the caucus. There are critics of the leadership on the left edge of the caucus that were voiced during the campaign, but Moulton had, I mean, if he reached out to them, I haven't seen it, and it certainly hasn't paid off in any way, because, I mean, take Rashida Tlaib, for example. Rashida Tlaib, avowed socialist, who won Michigan 13 in the Detroit area, she was asked on CNN during the campaign, will you vote for Pelosi? She said, probably not, because she supports the big banks and doesn't speak about the issues that matter to the people in my district. After the election, she was asked, are you voting against Pelosi? And she said, tell me who's running. And then just recently on the New York Times podcast, she said, well, there's no opponent, there's no challenger, so what am I going to do? There was opportunity to build a left-right coalition of, now it's not easy. How do you find the one candidate they're all going to agree on? That's very hard. Yeah. But Nancy Pelosi is somebody who has united all these factions. If you're going to dislodge somebody, if you're going to win a leadership election in a diverse caucus, you better be good at uniting disparate factions. At least try. And Moulton did not. And so he needed that right at the top. And so to have a trio, it would have been easier to unite disparate factions, because you at least could have given people different slots. I mean, they'd be fighting over who's number one, but that's your best shot at uniting different groups, and he didn't really try.
Let me just say, I just admire her for her toughness and for her effectiveness, and I think she is your Cocaine Mitch. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of her, not philosophically,
right?
But as a leader, she's good. She's good at what she does.
So, and I saw, I forget which reporter, some reporter tweeted out all the texts that he's gotten from Republicans in awe of Pelosi's skills.
I saw that too.
And this is right after you wrote, Republicans should have been learning from Pelosi, and that's what's demonizing her. But what there is to learn from is she does not let the more cantankerous voices in her caucus, particularly from the left, dictate her behavior. The tail does not wag the dog with Pelosi. Pelosi is on record saying we're not impeaching. She's on record saying we're not abolishing ICE.
And not just saying we're not, but making fun of it in that Robert Draper New York Times Magazine piece, making fun of them. I would say, and I agree with you, and I don't want to take anything away from her. I wonder, in fairness to John Boehner and Paul Ryan, who are not in her league, I think we could say.
Right.
But in fairness to Boehner and Ryan, I think they have some pressures that Nancy doesn't have, including like a Fox News and a Rush Limbaugh. I just don't think there's an analog on the left that that is pushing and supporting the Freedom Caucus wing.
No, I think that is true, and I think there is more willingness to compromise in Democratic DNA than Republican DNA, at least up until this point. We'll see how well things go forward with the new influx of voices from the left in the Democratic caucus. So I do think she had a little bit more to work with, but that's also in part because they never let it get out of hand, or at least they haven't yet. And no one I think really tried. I mean, Boehner's philosophy with the Freedom Caucus always was, I'm going to let you walk off the cliff to learn your own lesson. Which worked to a point. You know, it's what ended the first big shutdown on his watch, but it didn't permanently teach them a lesson because they were still up in his grill, you know, a year later, driving fits about shutting down the government. So,
I mean, nobody since Hastert has an Hastert delay. Like, ever since that era ended, like the Hastert delay era ended, no Republican leader has tried to basically put them in line. Now, we did have Boehner flirted with it. Remember, he put like he kicked a couple people off the agriculture committee or something. You know, there were just a few incidents like that, but by and large, it was like he's being held hostage by his own caucus. There hasn't been anyone. Now, granted, they don't have the carrots or the sticks that they used to have to keep people in line, but I don't think anyone in the last decade in the Republican House has tried to actually tell people. They've been following instead of leading, and I don't see that changing with the next speaker. I just think he'll be taking his cues from Donald Trump. We'll see.
So one of the bigger questions going forward is I think it's pretty clear Moulton's going to get steamrolled on the House floor. So there's a bit of an open question because, just for folks who don't already know, Pelosi won the caucus vote, and there was no challenger, so that was a foregone conclusion. She gave folks the opportunity to vote no in the caucus, which is unusual, but just so someone could say if they felt they had to convince folks back home, I said I was going to oppose her. Here's the picture of my ballot. I did. She gave him that opportunity. But there still is, and all the other Democratic leadership posts, majority leader, whip, caucus chair, all those things, those get done at the caucus level, and that's it. Speaker is voted on by the entire House. You need a majority of everybody that votes. And so if you lose a faction of your own side, you might get denied a majority on the first ballot, and then you move to a second ballot. So Moulton's argument always was, I may not get a majority of people against Pelosi, but if I get enough, I'm going to deny her a majority on the House floor, and that will force her out of the race, and then we can have some kind of open election after that. Now, that bluff, I think, is by and large been called by Pelosi. I don't care how many things people you have lined up. I'm going to make my side deals and call your bluff on the floor.
I saw Justin Amash, who's a libertarian-ish Republican congressman from Michigan, on Twitter yesterday complaining about some rule change to how the speaker is selected. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah. So separate from the Moulton faction is something called the Problem Solvers Caucus. The Problem Solvers Caucus is a project of no labels, and it's got Republicans and Democrats. And they have been pushing a set of rules changes that they think.
There's also the Problem Causers Caucus. That's right. The Ted Cruz-led group.
Well, and this is in some way a direct response to them. Excuse me while I do a slight bit of Googling, so I just want to make sure I get the specifics correct. But they have been pushing a set of rules changes which they think will facilitate bipartisan legislation. And, for example, one of the changes would say if a bill has 290 co-sponsors, which would be sort of a supermajority, you have to be Republicans and Democrats. I think that gets sent to the floor if I remember correctly. So the Hastert rule, which is you need a majority of the majority to put a bill on the floor, that renders that inoperative. So there was a provision in the rules package that changed how you can oust a speaker. Because under the old rules, you could make a motion to vacate the speaker.
Oh, right.
I believe with a majority of the House. And so, again, that could be the entirety of the minority.
Right.
With a small faction of the majority.
That's what they tried to do to Boehner at one
That's
point.
Right. And I think we talked about this.
I think they actually came kind of close, right?
Well, we learned after the fact in a Politico profile of Boehner that Tim Alberto wrote.
Is that the moment where he's like fixing the lawnmower?
Right, that's right. Pelosi said in that piece. Now, mind you, this is was not revealed at the time.
This is
that she said, "I told Boehner I will get him the votes from the Democrats to keep him as speaker, not because I have his back, because I have the institution's back. You can't have a minority faction of your party be able to oust a speaker. That's not good for the institution."
See, that's what I like about Nancy, and I have to assume she's telling the truth there. It's hard, you never know. But I like that about Nancy. That makes me like her. There's a lot of stuff. When I read that Robert Draper piece, there were a lot of things in there that I just found likable about her as a leader. Put aside the political philosophy.
So under the new rules, you can privilege a motion to vacate the speaker's chair if it comes from a major party caucus or conference. So it's still possible to do, but you're not going to do it. But I assume in this case, the Freedom Caucus is not a major caucus. It's a splinter group. So they can't band together and vacate the speaker chair effectively on their own. And I imagine Justice Amash is piqued at that because he's a Freedom Caucus guy, right?
Has this passed, or is this up for?
Well, I mean, these are going to be in the new rules.
Okay.
And so every new Congress sets their own rules.
Yeah.
She's agreed to have those be in the rules. She will put that on the floor, presumably get all the Democrats to vote for it, and there are your new rules.
By the way,
they're only good for the 2-year period. You can change them 2 years later, but she said, I would do this for this session.
And it sets precedent a lot of times.
Yes.
I mean, speaking of which, I just listened to a really interesting podcast, Jonah Goldberg's show, The Remnant.
Yeah.
He had this congressman on named Mike Gallagher.
Uh-huh.
Not to be confused with the radio talk show host Mike Gallagher.
Or the watermelon smashing comedian Gallagher.
Or him, yeah. So Mike Gallagher and Jonah Goldberg were basically agreeing that a lot of the rules changes that Gingrich introduced with the Contract of America actually harmed the institution and ended up being negative. Some of it had to do with committee chairs and seniority and
Republicans want to blow all that up. So we have term limits on committee chairs.
Right.
So nobody accumulates power. But if you don't accumulate power, it becomes hard to get things done. And if it's rotating cast of characters who can't navigate their own committees, you end up, spinning your wheels.
It's like getting rid of earmarks. I mean, It sounds good, and there's a logical argument for it, but there are unintended consequences.
Well, I always thought the point of those things were so you did not get things done. Republicans did not want to pass a lot of legislation, and therefore the bug is a feature.
Well, one of the other things they talk about in this podcast, which I recommend, The Remnant, Jonah Goldberg, is they talk about how Gingrich wanted to cut the budget, the number of staffers you could have in Congress, and cut the budget of Congress and stuff like that, which again sounds good. Congress limiting its own amount of money, but that has consequences too, and they were lamenting some of those changes.
Let me circle back for the Democrats for a bit, because I do think so. On one hand, Pelosi, I think, is, if she hasn't totally crushed the Moulton Revolt, she's one step before doing that fully. You already have people like Brian Higgins and Stephen Lynch who are on the Moulton letter that are peeled off. I don't think Moulton has enough people as it stands to deny, even if they hung together, that he can't stop Pelosi on the floor by himself at this point. He would need other people to jump on, and the numbers seem to keep going down. having said that, it's not as if she has completely unified the rest of her caucus. So you had one leadership vote this week for caucus chair, which is the number 5 position. It was the only one that had any kind of real binary contesting. It was Hakeem Jeffries versus Barbara Lee. And Barbara Lee has long been a big favorite of the far left because she was the lone vote against the authorization of military force after 9/11. So the lonely vote where it seemed like you're a traitor if you're not voting for this after 9/11. And she was like, this is too open-ended and I'm not going to do it. And some would argue that her prediction has borne out over time. So she's always had a lot of love from the left after that. And Hakeem Jeffries, their vote records are both very progressive. But there are people on the left that say Hakeem Jeffries is establishment. He gets money from corporate donors. He's for charter schools. He talks about working with Republicans. That's not a real progressive. And that vote was a close vote, but Jeffries won by a bit. And the Barbara Lee folks were pretty angry about it. They herald charges of ageism and sexism. And The Intercept just had a big piece. Intercept is where Glenn Greenwald writes, but Ryan Grimm is the person there who does a lot of their articles, particularly about internal Democratic divisions. He was
at the HuffPost, right?
He was the HuffPost. He accused Joe Crowley, who was defeated by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in the primary, but is still in Congress as of today and is the current caucus chair. He accused Crowley of spreading a rumor that Barbara Lee gave money to Ocasio-Cortez to damage her prospects. And they argue that she did give her money, but it was post-primary, not pre-primary, and other people did that too. So it really wasn't some sort of big FU to the establishment, but Crowley spun it that way. Now, I don't
feel like, unless there's debt retirement, I don't understand why you would give her money after the primary, because she already won and she's obviously going to win the general election.
I don't know what exactly their calculation were. I assume to some degree it's a courtesy to say no hard feelings, you'll be welcome in this caucus kind of thing. But and I don't know if
maybe there is debt retirement too. Who knows?
And I'm not saying the Intercept is making stuff up, but I don't know if that literally is the entire story. If they got told something that got spun, I don't know if that's exactly what Crowley did, but that's what they reported. Okay. And so my point is that there is some lingering bitterness on the left about this race, and that may have not just because of that, but there already was going to be the potential for tensions because Ocasio-Cortez is trying to lead a faction of people to push ambitious legislation, ambitious leftist legislation, and force votes on the floor, where a lot of people who just won, we got about 31 Democrats who won in Trump districts. They didn't run on big ticket, progressive wish list items. So the thing that is most on our radars right now is climate. Ocasio-Cortez came in, I think on the first day, a protest in Pelosi's office demanding a Green New Deal. And what exactly is in a Green New Deal is not well defined. The resolution that Ocasio-Cortez is pushing it's not a bill. It's not an actual proposal. It's to set up a committee to create a bill, but it sets out what principles for that bill, one of which is massive investment in creating things like green new jobs. And that means spending money. There are other ways to craft climate legislation that don't spend a lot of money, or at least don't for example, you have another bill. You have another bill from a small but bipartisan group. I believe it's 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans. One of them is John Delaney, who's running for president. He's an outgoing member of Congress from Maryland. He's independently wealthy. He's spending a lot of money in Iowa right now. He's been in Iowa all year, trying to get a head start. This is a carbon tax. It is a bona fide carbon tax, but it is tied to a reduction in the corporate tax rate. And then money goes to helping displaced coal workers and straight up checks to regular Americans. So it's not money going into green new jobs. It's not going into, for example, this, I don't know, so it would be in the Green New Deal. I would imagine it would, money to impoverished communities, because the argument is they are hit the hardest by climate change.
Right.
They need money to help mitigate those impacts. So you have...
and if you tax carbon, you would presumably get less carbon.
Well, right. That's the idea of a carbon tax is always to create a financial disincentive to pollute.
Right.
And the nascent hope for that to be a bipartisan bill was to make it revenue neutral. I'm going to jack up this carbon tax, or create a carbon tax, but lower the corporate tax rate in response. There's no net new revenue. It's not a big government plan. It's just a rejiggering of the tax code. That shouldn't offend most conservatives. If you got out of sort of tribal politics, it might offend, the coal industry, it might offend the oil industry, but it shouldn't offend a Grover Norquist, for example, because it's revenue neutral. And if you're
Grover would be worried. I can just tell you what Grover would say, and this is an idea. This is an idea that's been around for a long time, and I would imagine what Grover would say is that what's going to happen is you'll get the carbon tax, but you actually aren't going to get the corporate tax cuts or the other tax cuts.
Well, it's in the same bill. I mean, this is a bill where they're both there together.
Or they'll come back, right? So,
well, anything. Anything can always come back. Anything can always be readjusted.
I'm just telling you what Grover would say.
Okay.
So, once you have a carbon tax, and let's say the corporate tax goes down, but you have a carbon tax, like once it's there, it's there. Now, 5 years from now, they'll raise back the corporate tax up, but you're never going to, like, once a liberal idea has a foothold, it's very difficult to repeal.
Well,
and that would be his argument.
But the converse is just as much true. You could pass a carbon tax, and therefore the pressure then becomes to lower that carbon tax over time. And there's no pressure to raise taxes, because there's rarely pressures to raise taxes in general. So
when do you ever completely get rid of it?
You might not get rid of it, although they did in Australia.
Once the tax exists.
They did get rid of it in Australia. Big conservative backlash, and they got scrapped. It barely got embedded into the country's fabric.
Yeah, Bill, I hate to say this, but, I did write a big paper on that. But I appreciate you, telling the listeners who may not be as up to speed as you and I are on this topic.
So, carbon tax for a long time was like the liberal touchstone. When in the Obama years, when the push was cap and trade, your left-wing purists say cap and trade, applying market principles. No, we need a carbon tax. Now there's a carbon tax bill on the that's been introduced, but it's bipartisan and it's not a revenue raiser. You're not seeing the left rush to sponsor that bill, because now the hot new thing is Ocasio-Cortez and Green New Deal. So those types of policy tensions, I think, are going to loom very large for the new Congress. I think if anyone was going to manage that well, it's a Nancy Pelosi. But nevertheless, you can't say for a guarantee that there's not going to be any kind of frictions and fights and complications over the next 2 years.
I wish Republicans had. I wish Nancy Pelosi were a Republican, and I wish Republicans had Nancy Pelosi as their speaker or as their majority leader in the House. I think Cocaine Mitch is doing a pretty bang-up job.
I mean, isn't he Pelosi-like? He exercises a very firm control over his caucus and generally keeps his far right in line.
And he doesn't want to be president.
Right. What's the crazy thing? The notion that these positions should be the face of the party. Pelosi, she may have all these attributes, but she's a bad face of the party. She's not the face of the party.
Right.
She's an insider, like McConnell's an insider. She's there to do a job inside, and those jobs are inherently unpopular. They do unpopular things. They make the sausage. They obstruct the sausage. Nobody likes it. There's going to be a presidential primary that's already started. That's your debate over who's the face of the party.
And I come back to your we want them on the wall, we need them on the wall line. Yeah. By the way, I love that movie, A Few Good Men. Have you ever picked up on the anti-Semitic thing where Jack Nicholson drops in that movie? Have you noticed this?
I haven't seen it in such a long time.
Okay. So if you watch the movie, during that great speech, that Nicholson gives, he's being interrogated by Tom Cruise. But during the speech, Jack Nicholson says, who's going to protect us? You, Private Weinberg, which is not the name of Tom Cruise's character. It's like another guy who is just sitting there, doesn't say anything. It's completely apropos of nothing. And Jack Nicholson invokes him. I think I would assume that the subtext is that this is showing that Colonel Jessup is harboring some anti-Semitic feelings deep down.
All right, very interesting.
That's what makes for the good movie. It's the little stuff that you pick up as you watch it.
Well, I know you got to run. I think I have to run. Anything else you got to plug?
And by the way, Tom Cruise is Kathy, I think's his name. His last name's Kathy or Kathy, so it's clearly not Weinberg. I want to plug a couple things. I've had some really cool podcast discussions this week on Matt Lewis and the News. One is I had Beth Macy, who wrote this great book called Dope Sick about the opioid epidemic happening in West Virginia and rural Virginia. And we had a great conversation about a very serious topic. Check that out. I also interviewed and talked to Jose Antonio Vargas about his new book, Dear America, Notes of an Undocumented Citizen. And, Bill, you'll appreciate this. The first 10 or 15 minutes of our discussion was devoted to a time when Jose Vargas was a reporter at the Washington Post covering the intersection of politics and technology. And one of his young sources was a conservative blogger named Matt Lewis. And Jose Antonio Vargas, who has become this, icon of immigration reform and all that, was the just a quintessential, unbiased, fair, great reporter to work with. And we spent, the first 10 minutes of our podcast kind of reminiscing about what it was like back in the old blogosphere days. So check that out.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I am taping later today an interview with Patricia O'Toole, who just wrote the book The Moralist, about my favorite subject, Woodrow Wilson.
Yes.
So we'll be talking.
I sent you a Woodrow Wilson book.
That's the book. That's the book.
Is that the book?
Yeah.
Okay. But my wife, my wife sent you the book.
Yes. I think she was trying to make this match happen, so it has happened. So that should be uploaded later next week. And check out my most recent Politico piece, The Pathetic Pelosi Putsch, dissecting all the ways Seth Moulton went wrong over at Politico.
And you're out to get Seth Moulton.
Well, he made it easy. I do think he wanted to run for president, and I think he has totally 100% ruined that possibility for himself.
Well, maybe he and Michael Avenatti can have a buddy comedy TV show or something.
Very possible. All right. I will see you next week, sir.
All right. See you guys.
All right.